All right, so welcome to the Swarm tier list. I have banged out this game a bit too much, so I feel like I have some valid points to share. I did just record this video and realized that my mic was muted. I was talking, and yeah, bit fuming. So we're gonna make this one shorter because the other one was like 20 minutes. So I feel like I can make my points a bit more concise. Anyway, let's get into it. I mean, I have just a premise. I've put about probably over 50 hours into the game. I've played over 250 games right now. I've beat the Beachhead on every single champ multiple times, trying to like test them out and trying to get videos. So let's start with Illaoi. Now, I did really like Illaoi at the beginning of Swarm, and I thought she was one of the strongest. She definitely felt like one of the tankiest, and she is to a certain point. But she kind of lacks damage, and that's another thing to premise. It's kind of subjective, and it's like, how do you do a tier list? Is it based off their just like overall input, like all round? Is it based off like damage, abilities to synergize with like augments that you get and all that stuff? It's kind of all round, but a lot of it breaks down to like just damage and like actually killing bosses and how easily you can solo the map. Because obviously, if you're going in with a team of 4, you might want to have different various roles, like a support and a tank and a DPS and something like that. But we're just going to go off like basic damage, and like this is my opinion. If I was to solo Aatrox or something, this is how strong each champ is. So Illaoi's in D. Her tentacles, they feel good early, but they don't actually do a lot of damage later on. The clear is unbelievable. The sustain is massive. If you get max health and max health regen, the more tentacles that you put down, the more regen it does. It adds an extra regen per tentacle. It's got to a point where I've had about 100 to 150 health regen, so even though I can get hit, I'm healing all of that back every single second. But yeah, the damage output is lacking. The R is very satisfying, and pair that with duration, area size, and even if you get like crit damage and haste, you can have some really strong tentacles, but just not as strong as the other champs that we're seeing here. And for that reason, she's going to go in D quite comfortably. Xayah. Now, in my opinion, Xayah is S tier. She might just be the greatest champ in Swarm. I used to think it was Yasuo, but after some reevaluation, this champ is just broken. I've had many occurrences where I've soloed Aatrox on Extreme with one click of the E. If you get perfect augments, with crit chance, like ramming runner, critical, what's it called? Critical mission or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And then there's some other augments you can mix in. You can basically one-shot Aatrox by autoing in his direction, pulling him back until you basically have max feathers on the floor, press E, and you just one-shot him. I've one-shotted him on both phases. I haven't been able to do that with any other champ, no matter how much crit I get and how many cross-countries and bonuses for AD and damage that I can find. Xayah just seems to be the best at that. Her feathers do way too much damage. She can stun enemies. Her R basically gives her invulnerability and a get out of jail free card of any situation. And even when you've come up and fallen back down from her R, you're still invulnerable for a short period of time with the burst of movement speed that you get. I think it's like 200% or like double your current movement speed, which is what makes her S tier. Like, it's just pure single target damage. She's the fastest champ in the game at taking down any mini-boss and the actual bosses. And the elites, who used to feel stupidly tanky, just go down in seconds with her. So that is why she's S tier. Next up, we got Seraphine. Now, this pains me to say it, but the more I've been playing, I actually think that Seraphine is down here. I just realized that my D and C is messed up. There you go. Seraphine is D tier. I think she's one of the worst champs in the game. She is good from a support angle. And good early game, like when you haven't unlocked all the champs, don't have all the upgrades. If you're going in with a group of people, you might want Seraphine. She has the ult, which stuns the whole board and does damage to the whole board, so it can be a get out of jail free card. And also the E, which increases movement speed for everyone nearby and gives them a shield. But her pure damage output is pretty poor compared to other champs here. Her auto is really good once evolved, but before it's evolved, it's not the greatest. And it goes out in its waves, and because it's going out diagonally, unless you have a lot of projectiles, you can basically just like miss half the champs. It goes in between them. So for that reason, she's going to be in D. To take down Aatrox solo, it took a very long time. It took the longest out of all of these champs. And that game was just kind of a bit boring as well. For that reason, she's in D. Riven, she is unbelievable. Not quite S tier in my opinion. I think she's high A. But if you like cross country on Riven, cross country is one of the best augments to get hands down. It is the best on Riven. Just the pure movement speed with your auto. It basically doubles your movement speed every other second. So you can just stack up really easily on that. Her sustain, along with her damage, is a joke. Because the way her passive works is that if you are closer to people, if you're closer to enemies, the more damage you deal to them. So you kind of want to run into them. And the more damage you deal to them, you get a bigger shield. So late game, you basically become this invulnerable tank with just perma-shield, just going into clusters of enemies, and it looks like you never take damage just because of the amount of shields that you're getting because you're landing on top of a massive cluster of them. Her R is really fun to use, and she's probably one of the most unique champions just because she hasn't got like an auto that you aim. You have to keep moving to press it, keep moving to actually auto. If you stand still, she doesn't do anything. But yeah, taking down bosses, it does become easy late game. It's not as easy as Xayah, but she is up there. Definitely top 3, top 4 champ. Next up, we got Jinx. Jinx is underrated in my opinion. I used to think she was down here, but I actually think she's kind of middle of the pack. Again, single target damage like Xayah is cracked. It's not as good as Xayah, nowhere near as good, but Jinx's ability when it's evolved, her auto attack, is ridiculous. And it looks very satisfying. It's like a little rainbow gun. Her E is great for wave clearing. Her R is great for wave clearing. Her passive, I think, could be a bit better. Get excited. Every time you kill 75 enemies, you get that burst of movement speed. Sometimes it's more of a hindrance than it is a benefit, to be honest. Yes, it can help you get out of situations, but when there's a massive swarm around you, like when it gets to the parts in the game where you're literally surrounded from every angle when they're spawning so much, sometimes you just end up running into them because she doesn't have any sustain through like health, regen, shields, or anything like that. She's pure damage. You can end up running into stuff and dying, especially the bombs. The amount of times I've died through Jinx because I've had to get excited, maybe mixed with the MF boon of movement speed, and you just end up running into shit. It's kind of annoying. It's kind of annoying. But middle of the pack, she does more damage than the guys down here, less damage up here, but overall just a great champ, viable to play. Still kills Aatrox very fast because of the single target damage. But yeah, not a lot of sustain, so you're very, very squishy. Briar. Now, in my opinion, Briar is also S tier, just below Xayah. Second best champion Swarm. Her sustain is unmatched, and they recently just buffed it. When it gets to the point where you're fully maxed out with upgrades and Anima power, you basically press E, near enough invulnerable, press E again to get the boost of health, and your E is basically off cooldown immediately. So you just constantly, you don't even need to move. Like the no-hit game that I did, or the no-moving game that I did, was the easiest game of all time because you just press E, you wait for it to come off cooldown, which takes a second once haste is maxed, and you press E again. And if you get the right augments, getting bonus haste, even easier. Her ultimate is cracked as well because you can go from one end of the map to the other in a second. So if you want to get a card, travel to a Yuumi quest, travel to revive a mate, you can literally press on the mini-map where you want to go with R, and you travel the whole way there. And also, if you're like 1 HP and you press R, you basically heal to full. Her auto attack is broken as well because it scales so much with area size that it basically becomes like Yasuo clearing the whole board. Obviously not hitting every single angle, but if you get the area size maxed, you just walk in a direction and just clean absolutely everything in front of you. And then scaling with max health as well. She's very tanky through that because you're going to get max health every single time to evolve her auto. And then thus your health regen and all of that stuff's going to be mad through her E and her R and just sustain. And her passive, when the lower that she gets, the more she heals and the more damage she does and the faster she moves. So she is the full package. She feels like she cannot die. And going on to people who cannot die, I used to think Leona couldn't die more so than Briar, but it's actually not the case anymore in my opinion. I think she's B tier, above Alawi in tankiness, just because that E from Leona is ridiculous. The shield, it basically just kills everyone around you and you don't take any damage. Pair that with the armor scaling that she gets, and there's some augments that you get like Juggernaut that work with armor scaling to get extra damage. She is a perfect tank for your team, better than Alawi in my opinion. The R can also stun, very good for early game if you're struggling with bosses like the Nocturnes or the Elites that are getting too close to you if you don't have much movement speed. If you're going in with a group, having a Leona in your team, when she presses R, it stuns all the enemies. It will pretty much kill all the lower enemies or the normal ones, but the Elites, mini bosses and all that, it stuns them. And they patched it the other day where if you actually died and got revived, it didn't stun after that point. But now that's fixed. So yeah, Leona's just an all-round tanky person, but her damage lacks. Her damage does massively lack. Taking down Aatrox was similar to that of Illaoi and Seraphine with Leona. It was a slog. The weapons seemed to do most of the damage. But her auto is surprisingly good. For a melee champ, her auto goes very far. Like, very, very far. The range is ridiculous. And you pair that with area size again, like Briar, and it hits from a mile away. Alright, on to Yasuo. I used to think he was the best in the game. I think everyone did. Everyone thought he was the best in the game. But my opinion, I think he's about 4th. Low A. The only thing that he's got going for him, in my opinion, is his Steel Tempest, which is his auto, which only comes into effect once you evolve it. And you need to get your projectiles up as well, otherwise you're just going to have shit or tornadoes going around the gaff. But he's pretty much useless until he evolves his auto. And if you don't evolve it early, like if you get unlucky and end up evolving it at round like 20 to 25 or level 20 to 25, that's the first 10 minutes of the game where you feel useless and your weapons are pretty much doing all of the damage. His E is very good because it gives him that short burst of invulnerability and movement speed, so he can get from area to area very fast. Or if there's a big chunk of enemies, he can just spam E through them and get out of like a trapped corner. But the thing that lets his kit down as well, I think, is his R. Pretty pointless. Again, might be useful early game, but because my account has been maxed for so long with everything, his R is just... I never use it. I never press it. There's not a single situation where I think his R is useful, in my opinion. Once you have so much damage, once you've maxed Steel Tempest and all that, you pretty much kill everything anyway, at least from an ad perspective, like the normal enemies. Maybe not the mini-bosses and the elites. That could take a few hits. But in terms of just overall wave clear and AoE damage, Yasuo is probably the best, but he's lacking from his R. His E is alright, but yeah, his Steel Tempest is everything, and the fact that it takes so long to get and you can get unlucky, it's a bit of an L. Also, his single target damage isn't very good. In terms of taking down Aatrox, he was about 4th fastest as well. He didn't do that. Actually, I think Jinx took Aatrox down quicker than Yasuo. Anyway, on to Aurora. Now, this champ, I was very confused at the beginning of the game. Fucking hated her. Didn't know what she was doing. Felt like I did 0 damage. But the more I've been playing her, the more I actually enjoy her. I think she is high B tier. I think she can be better than Jinx. She doesn't do more damage than Jinx in certain circumstances, but she can in others. Like single target damage, maybe not. But also, her E is slept on. The E that does damage to enemies when you pass through them and grants her basically invincibility. Like she's just invulnerable like a ghost for like 5 seconds or whatever it is. If you go on top of a mini-boss or elite and you just AD on the spot, she'll do constant damage to them. And she can actually take down mini-bosses in one go in that 5 seconds before her invulnerability ends if you've got like the damage stats and good augments to pair with that. Her auto attack is the thing that surprised me the most. Once you've got that maxed and you have projectiles, it does a lot of damage. It does a lot of damage. And it marks them with the... I forgot what it's called now. I forgot what it's called, but it marks them with something. And the smaller enemies, once they're marked, after a certain amount of time, it will just basically kill them because they don't have much health. And if you've got it maxed, it will just take them out. Single target damage, again, is pretty good with her E and her autos. Where she is lacking, like Yasuo, is the R. I feel like her R is a bit of a death trap. I never use it. Like Yasuo, I just never use her R. They did buff it. They called it a buff 2 days ago where it made it so that when you press R, you get the short burst of invulnerability like you do with your E just while you're casting, so you can't get like hit while you're casting. And then obviously you go wall to wall, invulnerable, knock up and do damage. The damage from that seems absolutely pathetic. The knock up seems useless in my opinion. But she makes up for it with her E, which is one of the best abilities in the game, and her auto, which is, again, one of the best autos in the game, along with the fact that you move it with your cursor around and you can hit a stupid amount of enemies, not just in a linear line, is very, very good. And she's very, very fast and can get out of areas very quick. And also, you want to get XP with her every time, because that evolves her thing. And I would recommend getting XP every single game anyway. I try to max it first every game, unless if I'm playing like Yasuo, I want to max that first, but... That's just that's a Yasuo problem. But anyway, yeah, I think she's actually slept on. Give her a try if you haven't had that good of an experience on her. Like if you get your account up and get it maxed, try her again. You'll probably be pleasantly surprised. But anyway, this is my tier list. I think it is pretty solid. If you would change anything, let me know what you would change. I'm very intrigued because I feel like the amount of games and hours I've put into this, I feel like I've got a good general gist, and I've played them all very, very recently. I've went through every single champ again on Extreme in the last like 5 hours, so it's all fresh in my head. But yeah, that was my tier list. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in a bit. Bye-bye.